Okay. Thank you very much. So good morning once again, and thanks for having me. I appreciate everyone for the willingness to learn from each other this morning. So this morning we'll be looking at observation studies, and I want to look at how to analyze observational studies with qualitative method. And then the first question that would like to ask ourselves is, what is qualitative observation? Because observation is broader than just in qualitative. I'm sure we would look at the differences that exist between the quantitative and the qualitative method of observation. But when we say we do observation, what do we do? It means that we learn with our senses. It means that as a researcher, you're willing to observe, to know your environment, to observe you. I don't want to use the word observe, to learn, to experience your environment with your senses. So that's what we do. So we collect data with our eyes, we collect with our nose, we taste, we touch, we hear. And those are our tool for data collection. What are the differences if you look at the quantitative and the qualitative observation? What would you think would be the difference? For me, we all know that, or I'm assuming we know that quantitative would be that we will eventually look at what we observe and hear and we see and we touch and we taste into numbers. So we are going to give measurement. We are going to attach numerical value to what we see, what we hear, what we taste, and what we touch. But for qualitative, it's going to be unquantified. It's going to be narratives. It's going to be text. It's going to be, permit me to use the word gist. It's going to be us telling our environment or telling our audience or telling, narrating our experiences via gist, via text, via voice, via stories. So that is the difference between the two. Now, what is observation? What are the types of observation that we have? How do we know when I just see things around me and when I'm observing? How do I know the difference? We all learn every day, but sometimes we learn unconsciously. What do I mean? Sometimes you're in an environment, you're learning the environment, you're having an experience of the environment, but you're not taking notes, you're not interested particularly in things around you. You're just a passerby, and an unconscious observer. So that differs from somebody who is willing to experience the environment, but experience it systematically, experience the environment intentionally. And that is what we do when you say you are observing your environment as a researcher. So it's different from, oh, I attended a party and I'm gisting a friend, or I'm telling a friend about the party. I'm just telling the friend what I saw or what I experienced or how fun it was, how interesting, how I was quickly served food, how the server ignored me. Well, that is just that is not necessarily observation. But when you say you observe, there are systematic ways of doing observation. Now, there's a continuum, and that's how I think I can explain the range of observation. There's usually this continuum of observation where there's just that passerby. But when we come to observation as researchers, there's this continuum where the beginning will be probably a naturalistic observer, somebody who is in the environment just to see and take notes. And then on the other extreme of the continuum, we'll have an ethnographer, somebody who is embedded, somebody who has immersed him or herself into that phenomenon that is willing to observe. So you've entered so much into the situation, then you are an ethnographic observer. But if you are just the person, a passerby, somebody who has checklists, who has, as we go on, we understand, somebody who is intentional about situation in that environment, but has systematic ways of checking, okay, hey, existed, oh, I sensed, I heard, I tasted, I saw, I felt, and then had ways of documenting this. Then you are either a participatory, non-participatory. So it goes on a continuum till you get to the extreme side, which is the ethnographic observer, somebody who has entered into what is learning. I would quickly like to give us some reasons why sometimes we do observation. Why are we interested? Why can we be interested in observation? And how are ways? What are the examples of observation, qualitative observation? Sometimes when we are, for instance, as medical personnel, as researchers, you are interested in sleep pattern of some patients. Yes, you can, of course, the patient is sleeping, and then the patient can only give you hours of sleep. So, okay, I slept, or I usually sleep at 7, and I find myself waking up at 12, and that's the maximum I can sleep. With that, there's really the information you can work with as a qualitative researcher. But if you have to observe the person sleeping, so in his house, he's sleeping, and then you want to see the sleep pattern that he has. Does he enter into the REM? Does he enter into the rapid eye movement stage of sleep? Does he have tantrums, and does he seem to depict some type of nightmare? Then you might need to do observation. You might need to see the patient sleep, either in your hospital or in the natural space. So that is a form of that I think is interesting example of observation. Another is probably you want to let me think. You want to think of somebody in I'm going before the slide, so I'm struggling. You want to examine appearances of some persons. You want to see why. Probably let's go to example of vitiligo. Somebody has vitiligo. How on their skin? How do they experience? How does their friends as teenager react to them in school? They can tell you their narratives if you do interview. Yes, they can tell you they are always negative. People are always aggressive. People always react to me negatively. Some call me cow. Some people call me blah 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 blah. That's his own, and that's interview. But if you want to observe, so you follow him or her to school, you from a distance observe how people react to some diseases in people, or then you'll be doing observation. You want to capture the feel of some, for instance, you want to observe people in the theater. You want to observe clients in the theater. You want to see how nurse patient or nurse patients relationship or communication exists in some hospitals or in some medical setting. They need to be nice to do observation. You want to see how new mothers hold or react to the newborns. If you ask parents, oh, so when you had your first baby or your first child or your first experience of giving birth, how did you react? Then people can tell you story. Oh, I was elated, I was happy, I was so delighted, I was happy to see my baby. But you might observe, if you are privileged to see them in their setting, that some reacted strangely to the baby at first, and then that will give a new dynamics to research and give interesting ways to which we can see reaction of parent to newborns. So those are examples of what comes quickly to mind. Now, what are the characteristics of qualitative observation? What are the things that, like I said earlier, some of us can be passerby. Some of us, of course, every day we have opportunities to experience our environment. So we are not necessarily observers, we are not necessarily researchers. But when it comes to researching and using observation, what are those things that we need to find or use that would make us say, oh, that person indeed has done some quality, some observation. The first thing is that the researcher here is the main source of data. You remember that all that the researcher will say is what we would read. We wouldn't be reading from, we are not asking questions, we are not interrogating the participants or the persons that we are interested in their lives, but we are going to depend solely on the researcher. So it means that the researcher must be very skilled in observation, must know the basic things that we should do and not do. So the researcher should um, know that is the source, the main source of the data, is the one that gives us, we are depending on his senses. So we are depending on his sight, we are depending on, as the audience, we are depending on the sight, we are depending on his taste, we are depending on his touch. If he says, oh, so I touched the surgical glove and it was not so clean, or the surgical packs, the things that I was supposed to use in the theater was not particularly good, or I went to a primary health care and I observed that. So we are totally depending on the researcher as a main source of data. It's the one that tells us, we depend on his own senses, his sight, his ears, his touch, his feel, his feelings, his taste. So this researcher is the main source of the data. The next is there are no wrong or right answers. Remember that the researcher is the king here. Yes, the person we are observing is the main is the one who gives the information, not necessarily with mouth. But remember that is, as we can only rely on the researcher to on his senses to understand the situation. So there are no wrong answers. So if he tells us, if a researcher sits in his house and then tells us stories of how you observed, for instance, an Egungun festival, or how you observed Ojudi Oba, we can only rely on his senses, his interpretation of the situation. If he tells us, oh, okay, so I traveled and I did endoscopy, and or I saw them do a different type of endoscopy or a type of surgical scopy, you know what I mean? A type of surgery that use device. Okay, and then it comes and tells us, we can only rely on all that he says. We were not there, we didn't experience with him. So there are no wrong answers when it comes to qualitative, especially when it comes to observation. We rely solely on the researcher. And then last characteristics is that people may differ on what the sensory information might mean. For instance, what you, if two of us are experiencing a thing, yes, it must be very similar, but we would know that it will differ. For instance, you give two bowls of ice cream to your children or to some persons and say, is the same flavor, is the same texture, is from the same source, they would definitely experience the ice cream differently. It might be slight difference, but they would experience the taste. Maybe somebody prefers strawberry, another prefers vanilla, and then you've given both of them vanilla. Or they both prefer vanilla, but they like toppings that differs. Probably one prefers or doesn't know he prefers pecan on it, and then the other prefers flakes or or peanuts on it. You do not know, but you have given them different things. You've given them the same, but they prefer something else. So their experience of the eating of ice cream would differ. It's the same when it comes to, yes, we are observing the same thing, but I don't like the sight of blood, and I have to observe surgical procedure. My feelings would alter the way I observe what I'm seeing. And then, yes, as much as I have checklists, when we go on, we'll talk about checklists. As much as I have checklists, as much as I rely on so much of my um I try to be as objective as I should be as a researcher, we would definitely experience the same situation differently. So those are the characteristics of um, qualitative observation. Now we'll move on to the types. What are the types of observation that we have? We have the naturalistic observation. This guy has decided to go to the river side that has cliffs, probably has gone to observe nature, probably has gone to observe the flow of river, probably has gone to observe how the snow melts on the mountain when it's close to the river, probably has gone to observe some animals that live in this environment. Also, probably has gone to observe the weather, the sky, how the sky melts when we don't know. But he has gone to a naturalistic, not necessarily because I'm talking about nature, but because he has gone to observe an environment. He has gone to see and to try to understand a particular thing. Now, if we, for instance, you go to yeah, let's use the example of the hospital setting. So you've gone to observe a primary health care. Oh, there's a report that at this healthcare center, there is uptake. There is a lot of family planning uptake. So people go to this clinic and then so you go there and then you sit down and then you're trying to observe that community. What makes them take up or use contraceptives more than other community. Then you sit, you're not asking questions, but you're trying to observe. Okay, so when they come in, oh, the nurse is so nice. There's a good patient or client patient communication. Oh, the public health physician in that particular primary health care sector or center, he's so nice. He cares about his patients. He talks to them about everything, or he gives so much, or he's also their pastor and he encourages them in church to take up family plan. You just don't know, but you go there and then you're not asking questions, but you're observing. Oh, okay, so you noted that in that community, the patient, you can see good communication between the patients and the nurses. It's not a nurse that's asking, oh, so are you married? Are you sure? Are you supposed to be taking family planning? Are you supposed to? So you see that, you see a smile on the face of the nurse or of the physician that attends to them. You noted that maybe the environment, the building of the healthcare is kind of secluded. You have gone there to naturally to observe what happens in this community, what actually makes a difference in the way people do uptake family planning. What could be the reason why there's so much uptake in here? So that is naturalistic observation. You have gone there to understand the dynamics in that environment without necessarily asking questions, without forcing your response or forcing, there are ways you can force answer to the question. You make sure that it fits. So that's naturalistic observation. So the next is participant observation. You move into what you're learning, has gone to probably observe a ritual or a ceremony, kind of ritual ceremony, and then is part of it. He's not just observing; is part of it. He's into it. Maybe he has been allowed to carry this bowl of fire, of smoke, to be part of it, to do something in it. So he's in it, not necessarily upholding looking at it, but is um part of it. Is reporting what he experienced while he was part of the process. So the difference, I will still use the example that I used earlier of taking family planning. So in this participant or this researcher has observed probably at first at a distance, and then decides to be part, present him or herself as somebody that has come to take family planning. Oh, so he just to so he has gone into the clinic, he sees the clinic more, he has questions from the nurse or from the physician. He is now part of the observation. Is observing at the same time is a participant. He's not is experiencing, yeah, he's experiencing the situation. So he's asking, he can see, oh, okay, so from a distance the nurse looked nice or looked hostile, but when you come in, they are nicer, they speak the dialect of the land, they, I don't know, they ask personal questions that are not irritating. People can ask personal questions that can put you off, but probably they have ways of attending to patients, or they do holistic kind of um, relationship. They speak to you, they encourage you to continue to bring others that you know that need to take more family time. Those things, they are not judgmental. They don't ask, oh, so you have two husbands. Oh, so your first husband left you. Oh. So they are not interested in such. They just are interested in your health, and then they don't want you to do well. Now is a participant observer. And that is the difference between the first and the second. Now, the last is somebody that is what we call the longitudinal observation. So the longitudinal observation is not, you're not just observing now. You can, as much as we can do longitudinal study, we can also do longitudinal observation. You can observe a child or a set of children from first term to third term. That's for pupils or for students in secondary school. You want to see what changed when they changed their teacher in the classroom. What changed? Now let's bring it back to probably sexual and reproductive health issues. So let's think of observing an adolescent or some cohort of adolescent. You've taught them that family planning, they should, if you must be sexually active, then you must um, use condom. And then you've done that when you think they were entering into menarche, or they were just becoming adolescent. And then you observe them over years to see, not necessarily asking them questions, but seeing the trajectory of their life for maybe for 6 years, from 10 to 16, and say, oh, okay, so if we give good sexual education, we can see that they grow up to be good adolescents, they grow up to be healthy, well-rounded, knowledgeable adolescents about their sexual health and wellness. And so having observed, I know that this phenomenon that this intervention that we've done, this training that we've done, made a difference in their lives. So that's another form of observation. The last that can be embedded, of course, but I didn't put here, is ethnography. Ethnography, like I said, from the continuum that I explained, is that the more you enter into observing a thing, the more ethnographic you become. And that's why you see the anthropologists and sociologists most times claim that they are ethnographers, or most times say they are ethnographers, because for you to understand the social norms of a society, you can't just look at it from a distance and then say, oh, I understand. You have to be embedded, you have to be inside, you have to submerge yourself into, you have to be attached, you have to be like a parasite, but not necessarily. It has to be a symbiotic parasitic relationship. You have to be inside, be ingrained in the society that you then can say, oh, I understand this more. It's like not being a politician. Permit me to use the example. And then profiling solutions and saying, oh, so they should have written, they should have this. This is a top of the head example. So don't crucify me if you don't agree. All right, so and then but when you then enter into politics, or you kind of understand the bureaucracy that exists in a system, you might be able to understand a bit more. Oh, okay, so that a president is a president doesn't say he just stamps his bill and says, oh, so this is assigned this and that is it. It helps you to understand more. So it's the same with observation and ethnography. The more you enter into your research phenomenon, the more you be able to understand and then be able to speak to it more sometimes. Of course, it can lead to emotional trauma and things, but that is um, what we do sometimes as researchers. Now, what are the considerations when we want to do observational research? What are things that we should consider? What are you obviously from what I've said, you would wonder, oh, so how objective can I be as a researcher when I'm doing observation? Because remember I said the researcher is the main source of data. So how objective? I'm observing a surgical procedure, and I'm supposed to report and tell the world what I've seen. How objective can I be? How I'm observing a relationship between a man and a woman. Oh, so I've been told their relationship is fantastic. They have good marital life, and I decided to go to their home and study them. How objective can I sometimes not feel, oh, it's because the man, it's because the woman is the one that is providing for the home and the man is carrying her bags around. And how can I pull down my own subjectivity? And that is how the more I can pull down my subjectivity, the more the more how can I say, the more um of a researcher I can call myself. We need to be as objective as possible. That's all I'm trying to say. So to consider that you to look at yourself and say, oh, I am an observer. I can observe objectively. And when people read through and then go back to do the same, they are likely going to find about the same thing. So it's more of, because you are the king, you are the one that dictates the tone of your research, of the not necessarily of the outcome, but you're the one reporting. You have to drop your personal biases and then be as transparent as possible. This the looking at this, just these three: objectivity, transparency, and personal bias, are things we could teach for another class. But permit me to say that we need to be as objective as we can, and then we need to be as transparent as we can, and then be as to drop our personal biases. So, and one of the ways to do this is to develop a checklist, is to work with experts to develop observation checklist. How do we do this? Um, like I said, you can't go to a space and just say, oh, I saw the man selling ice cream, so it must be nice. Oh, it must be a very it must be a very nice person. Oh, or because I saw them um enter into the primary healthcare center and they keep taking, and it looks like, oh, the patients, the nurses there are nice. We can't just conclude. There are checklists that we must build before going to the field. I've been privileged to examine people on PhD, on MSc, um, oral exams, and then they send their papers and say they've done observation. Beautiful paper, and I ask, what checklist did you use? I said, I just went there and I saw, and I came back and I reported. And I'm like, okay, so can you just go to the field and then ask random questions without a guide and come back and say, I've done interview? The same way with observation. So there must be checklists. The first thing that guides the development of a checklist is to know the scope and the purpose of your research. Why are you doing this research? Is it an evaluation research? Are you checking if the intervention you've done is good? Are you checking for knowledge? Is it knowledge building research? That guides what you put in your observation checklist. So the main thing that drives the observation, just like the main thing that drives your questionnaire, that drives your interview guide, is your purpose, your objective, the scope of your study. It's the same way what drives what you have in your checklist should be the purpose. What do you want to answer? What questions, what are you interested in? Okay, so I've attended Oshun Festival, or there's Oshun or Lojo Festival in Ife, or I've checked, I'm at the surgical space, and then somebody is doing surgery, or I'm in a youth-friendly center, and I want to see what are you going here to see? What do you want to know? That would drive what guides what you put in your checklist. Also, the next is to identify key areas or criteria. What are the categories that you want to break down into measurable behavior? Okay, so the main thing is to know, maybe nurse-patient communication, and how that you affect the uptake of family planning in this family healthcare, in this primary healthcare center. Yeah, that is what you are after. How do you then break it into measurable, um, something you can see? How do you break it? So we need to break down these things into measurable behavior that you can see. Oh, she smiles. So you write down. Did you observe that the patients smile when they come out of the clinic? Yeah, so every patient that comes out of the clinic has a smile on their face, or they look satisfied. That is something to measure. So we know that every patient, or first patient coming out, is satisfied. Second patient coming out looks disappointed. So looks disappointed. Oh, so there's somebody that at the door that welcomes them. Things to measure that eventually we can put together to say, okay, for friendliness, this is it. For communication in itself, this is it. The environment itself, what does it look like? Oh, is it tattered? Is it dirty? Is it a good environment? Something to check. Oh, okay. The environment is the center itself is secluded, or is beside a church, or is beside a mosque. Things to observe that will eventually guide what we want to see, that will inform the statement we would make eventually. And then obviously the next is to develop sessions, titles, and things. I've said that. So we break it into sections. And then what are those things that you want to see? Then you give, having developed, just like you develop your questionnaire, having developed this, then you give to people to review, you pre-test. Because sometimes you can sit down of course we all do, we sit down on our laptop and then develop this beautiful tool. You have to pre-test, you have to give to experts to review. And this is the example that I would love to share with us. So this example is to look at classroom behavior checklists. In this place, they wanted to evaluate teaching practices and classroom behavior. So the purpose of this observation, note that in your study, you might have 4 objectives or 4 purposes, but one of the objectives might be answered with observation. So in this example, one of the objectives that they are interested in answering with observation is to evaluate teaching practices and classroom behavior, so, or classroom environment. So now this is the purpose. Now there is a instruction given to you as a researcher is observe the classroom for 30 minutes and narrate your findings. What are the things you are going to be observing? First thing to observe is teaching methods. Just like I explained earlier, you have to have those things that you want to see. those things that you look out for. So the first thing that this researcher is interested in is the teaching method. What type of teaching method is the teacher does the teacher use? The teacher uses a variety of instructional strategy. Oh, okay. And then you write, he uses I saw him use chalk. He cleans the laws, he permits, his handwriting is beautiful, is um, things to check. What strategy do you know that he's using? You write them out. The teacher engages the student in active learning, does. So you write, yes, he observed, and then you write under this, he engages them. You write those things like, how does he engage them? Does he ask them questions? Does he ask for feedback? Having taught them 1+1, is he asking them to recite it after him? Having taught them multiplication table 2 times 2, 2 times 1, is he asking them to recite it? Did he teach them in a form of rhyme? Things like that. So you write them out. Classroom management, student engagement and things. I'm trying to rush because I see that my time is up. So now that we have all these notes written down, the researcher has written all these notes, how do we transcribe? So because it's something to he has recorded some voice notes, he has written some down, when he's writing down, is he supposed to be writing them verbatim as he sees it? Is he supposed to be explaining them as he writes? He has memo, he has notes, he has codes, he has comments aside. Okay, this is my interpretation of what the teacher is saying. This is how I think it should be done. And he has done all of this. How does he bring them to start coding them and start pulling them together? So he has his notes, he rewrites them as he remembers. The best to do as you remember, as you write, is to come back from the field and then go over your day and then add more to the notes. Because sometimes you might not be able to remember, or you might not be able to write all as it should be clear. But as you come back, you transcribe, you clean, you edit. It's like coding and recoding. So you in quantitative, when you come back and you clean your codes. Yeah, so you come back and clean what you've written, you clean it, and then that's the transcription process for observation. And then you move to coding. So we have two forms of coding. You have the inductive, where you didn't go with a preconceived notion of how you want to code, but you allow your data to guide your coding process. And then you have a deductive coding process. And then from that, I quickly rush the qualitative research designs that you could use to explain your data set that you have now. So we have these forms of research designs in qualitative research. We have the phenomenological research, under which we have three types. We have the immuneutic phenomenological research or approach. We have the interpretative phenomenological approach, and we have the transcendental phenomenological approach. Would I don't know how I can help, but let me quickly say that what we do in phenomenological is to do a lot of interpretation. So it comes with some sort of the coding strategy of the descriptive coding form, and then you do the interpretative coding. So in this form, you use these two. Is like saying that you do your univariate and you do your bivariate when you do phenomenological. So if you're doing phenomenological, you're getting to the phase of bivariate, which is a form in quantitative. And then we'll move to ethnography. Ethnography is also interpretative. So it's also a lot more of interpretation, but remember, is embedded. So you're doing more descriptive too, and then you're doing descriptive and interpretative. But the difference is for ethnography, you're doing a social norm. So you use in phenomenological when you want to understand issues that does not necessarily have to have social norms or that are not societal based. For instance, maybe you want to do a lot of things in medical setting. Yeah. But when you need to understand some social dynamics, some social norms, then you'll be doing ethnography. So that's one of the major difference between the two. And then for narrative is more descriptive. So you'll be doing lots of descriptive strategy of coding. You're just explaining things from in chronological order. For instance, all that you have observed, you want to do narrative. So all you will say is, oh, so for the first 1 month, these were the things I observed. And then you have, then the next 2 months or the second month, these were the things I observed. And then you do chronological, or you do them by team. Okay, so for relationship between patient and client, this was what I saw. um, so it's more narrative. For environment, these were the things I saw. So you have them as narrative approach. And then the next is case study. Case study is looking at a case just from the word, and then you blow it up. So you want to look at a family of, maybe there's a particular thing in that family that makes them unique. Maybe they die at 30 and all of them are died a particular type of disease, or because something unique, something strange, something off, and then you go there to observe them. And then you want to, so you're observing everything around that family, their family life, their religious life, their relationship with people, relationship in church, in mosque, their teachers in school and all. So one case, but bigger than just that case. So you make a lot of understanding of a case, and then you do the description. And then lastly, we do grounded theory. Grounded theory use the three coding strategy. You do the descriptive, the interpretative, and you do the presumptuous coding strategy. And then you have, so it's like saying you're doing univariate, bivariate, and multivariate. And most times you want to come up with a theory or a model that can guide other primary health care facilities to have better uptake of family planning. So that is quickly how I can rush through this program in 45 minutes. And I hope I've been able to make some sense, and you've been able to make some sense of what I said. Thank you very much for this privilege. And thanks for listening to me. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I must say, at every of your session, there's always something new to learn. Thank you very much. We'll now take questions. Question from the
Yeah, Kudus, your internet is not stable. And let me take over from you from here. Yeah, Kudus, your
chat
internet is
box.
not stable. Your internet
All
is
right.
not stable, Kudus. I'll take over. Thank you, everyone. So, yes, and just like Kudus said, I am here. I don't know how many times I've listened to Okwe, but I've learned something new. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Always been dynamic and, top of the game. So the space is open. We have 30 minutes to go. If you do have questions, please feel free to unmute your mic and ask your question. And if you want to drop it in the chat box, please do so. Any questions, please? Any questions? Okay, good morning. Okay, it's a thank you message from Dr. Ojo. I think for me, a number of highlights. One, please note that just like your quantitative studies that have study design, you talk about cross-sectional studies, clinical trials, cohorts, case control, you have that retrospective cohort. Please note that in qualitative studies, you do have study designs. That's the first thing. I remember when I was doing my PhD, and I even told my own PhD supervisor, and he said, no, he said I should remove it. I put it and I defended it. So not many people know it. You have study designs. You have to understand those study designs, and you have to use that as the first sentence in your methodology. We'll be going through that in the next module. The other thing for me, of course, that I completely am learning here is doing the checklist. I don't think I've ever seen anybody doing that observational checklist the way she did it. They do have checklists, you just put one box and check it. But here, there is explicit understanding such that you can reduce the subjectivity of the observation in a way that you can pull together phenomena you're observing and reporting it objectively. So you see that your qualitative study is beyond just doing quotes. There must be elements of objectivity despite the subjectivity of the observation. And if you're going to a Q1 journal, which is what we're teaching you here, you have to put all this in place. It's not just reporting quotes. Thanks once again for the brilliance. We do have a question from Chidebele. He says, good morning, Prof. Quite an interesting session. Please, ma. Thank you, ma. Thanks, ma. Please, the observational checklist, can it be structured as a Likert scale or strictly open-ended? Over.
Excellent question. Thanks for that question. It is open-ended. Remember that we don't do numbers in qualitative. That doesn't mean you don't report age, you don't report some frequencies and say, okay, so I had 4 participants, 10 participants were boys. No. But when it comes to the issues, you don't report in numbers, you report with words. So you can't do observation check. Okay, so maybe I should explain that. You could do your observation, you could explain or analyze your observation during qualitative or quantitative. And that guides your type of questioning or your type of checklist. You could, the same checklist that you have, you could put 1, 2, 3 and say, okay, I observed in the class that the children were noisy and the lecturer or the teacher or the lecturer couldn't have a control of the class. And then you put 1 and then level of control 1. The best control should be 3 or 5. Then you'll be doing Likert. If you go in the number way, then you're doing quantitative observation. So maybe I should explain that I think I did, that there are 2 types. You could do quantitative, you could do qualitative. But in qualitative, you can't do number. You would have to write stories and say, oh, the lecturer, each time he comes in, smiles at the students. You are going to narrate. You write all the things you see based on the questions. I entered the class. So it's open-ended. It's open-ended, and you're allowed to say all that you saw, felt, heard, tasted, if you tasted, touched, all your senses. I think that, so if you do that, then you analyze with qualitative research designs. But if you do quantitative, you box all your responses to 1, 2, 3, and then you gave a Likert scale. Then you do quantitative analysis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have a second question here that says, so observations like classroom evaluation. When the study participants are aware that they are being observed, it might affect the way they behave that period. How can the researchers handle this kind of situation? Over.
Thank you. Excellent question also. Well, you can't, as much as you remember that research, even when you give your respondent questionnaire, you don't force them to give responses that they do not want to give. For instance, you're asking your respondents about their sexual activity. They can choose to tell the truth or lie. So observation is not to make them tell you the truth, is what you can observe. As long as you are telling us what you saw, let's leave the respondents to themselves. And just the same way you're asking questions via interview. You're asking people, oh, okay, tell me about your sexual life. And you're asking, oh, how many partners have you had? And then he says, I've never had a partner. And then you know that he has partners. But he told you, I don't have any sexual partner. What right have you to say he's lying? So we don't have control over what our respondents does or does not do. Whatever you see, right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Kundai. I could add 1 or 2 also pieces of information I heard about this, that if you really also want to see people in their natural state, it's the long term, okay? With time, they will settle. If you keep coming to the class over 2, 3 weeks, after some time, all the pretenses go. And that is exactly what happens with Big Brother Africa. That's something. The big, it's with time, they become themselves. They forget that, you are observing. So I think it depends on whatever it is that you want to get. If you really want that situation, that natural situation, you can't be there once and say you're observing. All right, thank you. We have two more questions. I hope it will take us in the next 6 minutes to the end of the hour. There's a question from Dr. Lowell that says, how do we take consent in submerged participatory observations without making the participants have the Houghton effect, which is the social desirability bias? How do we take consent in submerged participatory observation without making the participants have the Houghton effect?
Thank
Over.
you. Thank you very much, Ma, and thank you, Dr. Lawa, for that question. As I'm thinking, how do we take? Okay, so for consent, like it's been said, observation, especially when it's so much, when it's ethnographic, is not a one-off thing. It's not something I can give you consent today and forget myself with it. But it takes time before to get so much. Is not a day, it's not a week, it's not 2 weeks. Before, if you come to my house and you want to learn my ways, I'm sure you are not going to come a month and you claim you know me. Now I know Professor Kunayo, she wakes up, she does this. Before you can do that and call it a so much, it takes time. And that's why you see um sociologists and ethnographers, they take time on a study. They don't do their study is not 6 months and it's off. They could be on a particular research for 5 years. They could be there for
Exactly.
6 years. So it takes a long time to get so much. So you'll have taken the consent at the beginning. They know they are gatekeepers. In fact, there are some things you can't get into. It takes time. I remember somebody was just giving us his experience at in Ife with a priest. He needed to learn about Ifa and needed to not to become Ifa priest, but to learn and write a book on Ifa and the process of Ifa. It took him 3 years, and he said the first 6 months he was going to the Ifa priest. He would get there and say, "About boy is how," and then they would welcome him. And then he keeps sending him on errand to go and buy granules, go and buy potato, go and buy roasted corn. He was going, but the man saw that he was consistently there. And then he started to open up and allow him in some spaces where he would ordinarily not have. There had been researchers that had been there before him that thought they could do it in a month, but didn't make any sense of the process. So such studies takes time before I would open up to you, but you'll have taken my consent at the beginning. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to share the experience of my friend and research partner, Chris Peterson, that got me interested in social sciences. She's brilliant. Well, she studied Idumota market for maybe 15 years before she wrote her book. Well, who does she want to sign consent for in Idumota market? Well, you would have gotten that waiver because they are study designs that will allow you to waive. There are study designs that will allow you to take consent after. There are study designs that you might be able to take consent before. So it's a whole mix, but there are places where you can you get the ethics approval and it's with you get the ethics approval and you get it after. For example, you want to study how I blink, how many minutes I blink. You can't get the consent before, you get it after. Oh, I was studying, you consent and those kind of things. Thank you very much. We have two more questions here. I'm going to ask, I think we can just take one. Apologies. So the questions are just starting to come. Because of the top of the hour, please, I'll just be able to take one. We would copy the questions, give it to Professor Ekundayo, and then the responses will move to the platform. I hope that is okay, so as to keep our time. Very briefly, we have 2 minutes. Justin Ngwofe says, thank you very much, Prof. Wonderful presentation. How do we minimize bias? Because my interpretation may be based on my experience. Thank you.
For that, minimizing bias takes time. It's not something you learn, but if you're truthful and then you're sincere, remember that research, I read somebody now that said, what of if my responses are wrong or does not align with what I want? So I would add them together. I always tell people no in research is a response. That I had this hypothesis this way and it came out another way doesn't say my research is a failure. It just means that there's a dynamics that I'm bringing on board that others might not have seen. So when you know that as you go to the field, it helps you to draw bias. Okay, I'm investigating or I'm researching um sex workers and I have my biases and I got there and I know that my personal biases would hurt what I would say. I don't need to preach or tell them what I think is in my head. Oh, your ways are not right. Not necessarily. Remember, they are the king. They have information that I need for my own progress, that I need for people to cite me, that I need to get promoted in my place of work, that I need to make a voice and make a difference. So if I'm biased, I will be hurting that opportunity for me to grow. So I think we can drop bias when we understand that our bias will not make it will make us researchers. It only makes us others. You join others to do things. So I think that's one way. But for qualitative, you can be biased, but you choose not to. As much as there are things to do, okay, there's transparency, you have others to check you, you can still be biased, but it's a choice.
Exactly.
I don't want to be biased. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think it's an excellent point to bring us to the end of the session. Dr. Kudus noted the issue of reflexivity also as a means of addressing this bias, where you would be able to report ahead. You will read many manuscripts that says, this is my context and this is where I'm coming. But it also takes training, like you noted. I teach students in the Oxford University topic, subjectivity. It's the recognition and an ability to be able to stay away from it. I know very early in my seed days where you would consciously take the class to look at your subjectiveness and drive, but that doesn't make it. You only minimize it. It doesn't turn it to zero because your context also brings its subjectivity. It only minimizes it. And yes, for a good paper, you reflect on this. Reflexivism is a very excellent way of also rounding up the paper and reflecting this subjectivity in your paper. Apologies, we've taken 2 extra minutes. This has been brilliant. Thank you once again, my sister and my friend and my teacher and my trainer. It's been always brilliant listening to you. I'm looking forward to the next class with you. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful day. All the other questions, we'll take it. She will answer and then we'll bring it onto the platform. Bye.